Hey guys, tonight we're stepping softly into the world of ancient Greece, just as the sun is beginning to rise over a sleepy polis. The air is cool, the marble rooftops are blushing pink with dawn light, and somewhere in the distance, a rooster lets out a rather proud and slightly off-key crow. You're about to live a full day in this world, walking the streets, visiting the bustling market, bathing like a philosopher athlete, and reclining at a symposium long into the night. By the end, you'll know the rhythm of daily life in ancient Greece so well that honestly, you probably wouldn't survive it. But that's fine, because you're tucked in bed. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where in the world are you listening from right now and what's your local time? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first rays of the sun creep across the city's limestone walls, painting everything in pale gold. You find yourself lying on a simple bed inside a small Athenian house. There's no glass window to block the morning air. Instead, wooden shutters swing gently, letting in the scent of olive trees and distant sea breeze. The chorus of early risers, roosters, creaking cartwheels, faint chatter from neighboring courtyards blends into a soundscape that's both foreign and strangely peaceful. You stretch, feeling the rough texture of the linen blanket against your skin. It's not the kind of blanket that begs for 5 more minutes, but in this moment, you let your eyes linger on the slowly brightening ceiling. Ancient Greeks typically rose with the sun. There's no snooze button, no blackout curtains, and certainly no scrolling through notifications. Life simply starts when the sky says so. You swing your legs off the bed and touch your feet to the cool, smooth floor. Terracotta tiles hold the night's chill, a little reminder that dawn can be crisp, even in the Mediterranean. The room around you is sparsely furnished. A low table, a few wooden stools, clay jugs stacked neatly in a corner. Practical, minimal, not a single neon light strip in sight. Outside, a distant sound catches your attention. A man calling out as he leads a donkey through the street. He's delivering amphorae of olive oil to the market. In this city, the day starts early for merchants, farmers, and servants. The hustle of urban life doesn't wait for anyone's morning mood. You step out into the small courtyard at the heart of the house. The open sky above frames the square perfectly, and the fig tree leans lazily toward the center. This is where families cook, wash, and talk. A small clay lamp still flickers from the night before, burning the last of its olive oil. The faint smell of smoke mingles with something earthy, perhaps from last night's embers. Ancient Greek cities weren't planned for lazy dawn walks. They were living, breathing mazes, growing over centuries. The streets outside are narrow, sometimes no wider than 2 people standing shoulder to shoulder. Houses are built close together for shade and protection. If you were to climb up and look across the rooftops, you'd see a patchwork of whitewashed walls, sloping tiles, and the occasional temple rising like a solemn giant over the city. Somewhere nearby, temple bells, or more accurately, the clatter of wooden boards struck together, announce the first religious rites of the day. People are stirring. You catch glimpses of women sweeping doorsteps, men adjusting their cloaks, children running errands with baskets far too big for their little arms. The agora, the bustling market and civic center, will soon become the heartbeat of Athens, but for now, it's the quiet moments before the storm. And as you watch, you realize how much this early routine shapes the entire day. Without artificial light or modern distractions, the rhythm of life is synchronized to nature. Wake with the sun, work in the light, gather and debate in the warm hours, retreat as darkness returns. Historians still argue whether this sunrise-anchored rhythm made people more attuned to their environment or simply gave them less choice in the matter. You wrap a light himation, a kind of rectangular cloak around your shoulders. It's woven from wool, soft but slightly scratchy against your neck. fashion in this case is about practicality. This garment will take you from dawn to dusk through markets, temples, and social gatherings. There's a quirky tidbit. Many people wore their himation without pins or fasteners, which meant that one wrong breeze could lead to an unplanned toga malfunction. Modesty was an art form. As you step onto the street, you feel the ground beneath you. It's uneven, paved in some places with stone, dirt in others. Watch your step. Ancient cities didn't come with warning signs or street lamps. The first light is now bright enough to illuminate the outlines of the Acropolis looming in the distance. It's not yet crowded with pilgrims, but even from here, its columns catch the sun like a lighthouse on land. The cool air brushes against your face as you start walking slowly, almost aimlessly, letting the city wake up around you. A pair of goats bleat from a nearby yard. A woman pours water into a basin, the splash echoing off the walls. Someone sneezes loudly. Somewhere else, a philosopher clears his throat in preparation for an unsolicited lecture. You pause at a small shrine near the intersection of two alleys. These little shrines, often dedicated to Hermes, stand guard at crossroads, covered in offerings, olive branches, small clay figurines, bits of food. You watch as an older man, already awake and impeccably dressed, murmurs a short prayer before setting off toward the agora. It's easy to romanticize this dawn, to think of it as peaceful and idyllic. But remember, the city is alive with responsibility. Slaves are already hard at work grinding grain. Bakers are kneading dough in dimly lit rooms. Fishermen have returned from the night's catch, their boats bobbing in the harbor. The air is laced with purpose, even if, to your sleepy modern mind, it feels like a gentle dream. The mainstream historical fact here is simple but grounding. Most Athenians lived their lives attuned to sunrise and sunset, their schedules shaped entirely by daylight. There's no electricity, no nightlife as we know it, only the natural cycle of the day. And a quirky tidbit? Some wealthier Greeks reportedly trained roosters not to crow at dawn just to squeeze in a little extra sleep, an ancient version of do not disturb. Historians still argue whether this kind of urban dawn felt bustling or serene. Some accounts paint it as noisy and chaotic from the first light. Others describe a slow, measured awakening. Maybe it was both, depending on where you stood and how much wine you'd had the night before. As the sun climbs higher, you find yourself fully immersed. This is no longer just a distant era. It's a living morning with its own rhythm, textures, and quiet jokes hidden in the streets. You breathe in deeply, feeling the faint salt of the Aegean on the air. Ahead of you, the path leads toward the market. But before you get there, there's a whole household to wake up and a morning ritual to unfold. The day is just beginning. The shutters creak as you turn back toward the house, ready to start your morning in proper Greek fashion. Unlike the endless, sluggish scroll through your phone in bed, mornings here are built on ritual, practical, physical, and a little bit fragrant. You step into the dim interior again, where soft shadows still cling to the walls. A jug of cool water stands on a low wooden stool, catching a sliver of light like a liquid mirror. You reach down and splash the water over your face. It's startlingly cold, almost shocking, but it does the job of shaking off any lingering sleepiness. In ancient Greece, this was more than just hygiene. It was a kind of quiet reset. You're not thinking about to-do lists or inboxes. You're grounding yourself in the tactile world. The temperature of the water, the clay rim of the jug, the sound of droplets hitting the floor. Nearby, a small pot of olive oil sits uncorked. This isn't for cooking, at least not right now. Wealthier Greeks and those with a sense of self-care often began their day with a light olive oil massage. You dip your fingers in and rub the oil across your arms and chest. It's thick, slightly fruity, and warms quickly against your skin. The oil gives off a faint, grassy scent, mingling with the morning air. It's surprisingly pleasant. There's no coconut, vanilla, lavender 3-in-1 body lotion here, just the liquid gold of the Mediterranean. And then comes the strigil, a curved metal scraper. People used it to scrape off the oil along with sweat and dust from yesterday's activities. Even at home, a quick strigil pass is normal. You hold it in your hand and run it along your arm. A faint squeak echoes. Ancient skincare in its minimalist glory. Historians still argue whether everyday Athenians actually did this daily or if it was mostly reserved for athletes and wealthier citizens, but the olive oil rub itself was widespread enough to be noted in multiple ancient texts. You slip on your chiton, the basic tunic of the day. It's a simple rectangle of linen fastened at the shoulders with fibulae, small pins, and belted at the waist. It's airy, practical, and surprisingly elegant. For many men, this would be the only garment worn during the day. If you were a woman, you'd likely wear a longer version, perhaps with extra folds and more pins. You adjust the belt, straighten the folds, and look down. No logos, no loud patterns, just clean, comfortable fabric. On the floor by the doorway sit your sandals, made of leather thongs woven through a sole. They're already slightly dusty, because everything here is dusty. Streets are unpaved in many neighborhoods, and sandal straps never stay pristine for long. You slide your feet in, tighten the straps, and wiggle your toes experimentally. They fit snugly, though you can tell they'll pick up half the city by lunchtime. A faint knock on the courtyard wall pulls your attention. It's a neighbor leaning over, greeting you with a casual "kaire," the ancient Greek equivalent of morning. You return the greeting with a nod. Early social interactions are short and warm. There's no drawn-out exchange of weather complaints or traffic woes. People have things to do. Back inside, someone is tending to the hearth. Even the simplest homes usually keep a fire smoldering through the night, so it's easy to rekindle it in the morning. A servant gently blows on the embers, coaxing them back to life. The faint crackle is oddly comforting. You smell the first hints of breakfast. Barley porridge, thick and warm, sweetened with honey if you're lucky. Maybe a few olives on the side, or dried figs. Breakfast in ancient Greece isn't a feast, it's functional. Most people eat something quick and filling before heading out for work or errands. Barley is the staple grain, cheaper and more common than wheat. You dip a piece of bread into the porridge, noticing how coarse it feels. There's no fluffy brioche here, just dense, rustic loaves baked on clay slabs. A mainstream historical fact worth noting: barley bread was considered the daily standard, while wheat bread was a luxury, often saved for special occasions or the wealthy. A quirky tidbit slips into your morning as you remember something. Some Athenians believed that eating garlic before heading out would ward off evil spirits, or perhaps discourage overly chatty neighbors. Either way, a garlicky breakfast was not uncommon. You glance at a small bulb sitting near the hearth and decide, maybe not today, you have people to talk to. As the house fully wakes, you can hear the overlapping rhythms of different lives. Children laugh in a nearby courtyard as they practice reciting poetry, because yes, memorization of Homer starts early. A donkey snorts outside, impatient for its load. The rhythmic whir of a spinning wheel starts as a woman begins turning wool into thread in the corner, hands moving expertly. You take a moment to breathe. There's something about this morning that's both busy and quiet. No devices buzz, no traffic jams loom. The entire rhythm of life flows outward from this central domestic space. The hearth, the water jug, the olive oil pot, the sandals by the door. It's intimate, tangible. Historians still argue whether the typical Athenian household was truly this peaceful in the mornings. Some sources suggest a more chaotic scene, especially in multi-generational homes packed with servants, slaves, and extended family. Others describe an orderly routine, honed by repetition over generations. The truth probably varies wildly depending on status, wealth, and whether the baby slept through the night. Before you step outside for the day, you offer a small prayer to Hestia, goddess of the hearth. It's quick, A few murmured words and maybe a pinch of incense tossed into the flame. Hestia's presence is in every home, quiet and unassuming, like the warm center of a household. This moment of reverence is less about spectacle and more about grounding. You sling a small pouch over your shoulder. Inside are a few coins, small bronze pieces, and perhaps a fig or two for the road. You're not carrying much. Most transactions in the market are simple, and many households produce a lot of what they need themselves. Still, it's always good to have a little on hand, especially if you pass a stall selling fresh honey cakes. As you move toward the doorway again, a ray of sunlight spills across the threshold. Outside, the streets are waking in full. Merchants push carts toward the agora. Women carrying jars of water walk in steady rhythm, balancing their loads with practiced grace. A young man jogs by, late for his morning training at the gymnasium. You step into this flow, sandals tapping softly against the ground. And just as you turn the corner, you spot something that makes you pause. A man standing with a small bronze mirror, adjusting his carefully curled hair. Ancient Greek men often paid surprising attention to their appearance. Some even used heated rods to curl their locks into neat spirals. Historians still argue whether this was purely aesthetic or also a marker of status. But either way, he's taking his time, and honestly, his curls are immaculate. A gentle breeze rolls through, carrying with it the mingled smells of smoke, baking bread, and distant sea air. The city is fully awake now, and you're part of it, not as a spectator, but as someone who has rubbed the olive oil on, tightened the sandal straps, and stepped into the rhythm. Your stomach is satisfied, your tunic sits comfortably, and your sandals are ready to be dusty. It's time to leave the cozy heart of the home behind and step fully into the streets of the polis, where gossip, errands, and donkey traffic await. The light over the courtyard grows stronger now, casting clean-edged shadows against the walls. Inside, the household begins its morning bustle in earnest, each person slipping into their well-worn roles. While your sandals scuff the floor softly, you pause for a moment to take it all in. This isn't just your morning anymore, it's everyone's. The hum of domestic life feels both familiar and foreign, like watching a play where the script has been memorized for centuries. In the corner of the courtyard, a servant kneels beside a grinding stone, rhythmically crushing barley grains into coarse flour. The sound is repetitive, almost hypnotic. Scrape, press, press. In most Athenian households, enslaved labor handles these heavy, monotonous tasks. It's not glamorous, but it's what keeps the porridge steaming and the bread rising. A mainstream historical fact worth remembering. Most Athenian homes relied on enslaved workers for daily chores, from grinding grain and fetching water to weaving and cleaning. The backbone of urban comfort was, quite literally, human labor. Near the hearth, a woman sits on a low stool, spinning wool. Her spindle twists expertly between her fingers, pulling soft fibers into long, even threads. The movement is constant and calm, almost meditative. You can hear the faint whir of the spindle, a tiny countermelody to the scrape of the millstone. In many Greek households, women spent a large part of their day spinning and weaving, producing the textiles that clothed the family. Looms were set up in rooms with good light, and the work never really stopped because clothing doesn't weave itself, and fast fashion won't exist for another 2,000 years. A quirky detail slips into view. A small terracotta piggy bank sits tucked behind the beam near the hearth. Shaped like an actual pig, complete with a slot along its back, it's used to store spare coins and tiny offerings to household gods. It's endearingly modern in spirit. Historians still argue whether such piggy banks were common household objects or if they belonged mostly to temples and sanctuaries. But examples have been found scattered across domestic ruins, suggesting at least some families liked keeping their savings in porcine form. The smells of breakfast still linger in the air: warm barley, honey, olives. A child trots across the courtyard with a slice of bread clutched in both hands, crumbs trailing like a map. He's reciting lines from Homer's Odyssey, badly but enthusiastically, under the patient eye of a tutor. In wealthier homes, boys begin their education early, memorizing epic poetry and learning letters. Girls, meanwhile, would more likely be instructed by their mothers in household management, weaving, and religious customs. Education isn't a standardized institution. It happens where the family can afford it, often in the home or under the portico of a local teacher. You glance toward the doorway. A servant girl approaches carrying a large clay hydria balanced on her shoulder. She's headed to the neighborhood fountain to fetch the day's water. This is a daily ritual. There's no indoor plumbing. Most homes rely on public fountains fed by aqueducts or underground springs. Fetching water is hard work, but it's also social. Women and servants often gather at the fountains, exchanging gossip and updates while waiting their turn. You imagine the rhythmic splash of water and the overlapping chatter, like a natural morning newsfeed. Before leaving the house, you wander into a small side room. It's sparsely furnished. A low couch, a few chests, and a wall niche holding small terracotta figurines, household gods and ancestors. A faint smell of burnt incense hangs in the air, evidence of early prayers. Daily religion here is not grand or theatrical. It's woven into every corner of life. Lighting a bit of incense, whispering a quiet hope for good fortune, these are as routine as brushing teeth would be centuries later. The oikos, or household, isn't just a physical structure. It's the center of economic and social life. Everything radiates outward from here. The house is usually arranged around a central courtyard, providing light, ventilation, and a gathering space. The rooms are modest by modern standards, but they're organized with clear functions. Men's spaces, like the andron, used later for symposiums, are often set apart from women's quarters, reflecting the gender norms of the time. Historians still debate whether these gendered spaces were rigidly enforced or more fluid in daily practice. Some argue that women were largely confined to domestic areas, while others point to inscriptions and records suggesting that many women moved through public spaces more freely, especially for religious events and water-carrying duties. As usual, the truth is probably somewhere in between. A spectrum shaped by class, wealth, and circumstance. A faint knock echoes from the wooden door. A neighbor appears, holding a basket of figs. There's a short exchange. Greetings, a few jokes, perhaps a promise to meet at the fountain later. Neighborly interactions like this knit the city together. With houses built so close, privacy is a relative concept. Conversations drift through windows, footsteps echo down narrow streets, and news travels faster than a courier on horseback, especially when delivered through a good dose of morning gossip. You catch sight of the family patriarch, or at least the eldest man of the house, emerging from a side room. He adjusts his himation carefully, ensuring the folds drape just so. Appearances matter in this society. Clothing signals status, composure, and respectability. His hair is neatly arranged, his beard trimmed. He pauses briefly by the hearth to offer a small prayer to Zeus Theseus, protector of the household, then strides out toward the street. His day will likely involve civic duties, business in the agora, or philosophical conversations under the stoa. Meanwhile, the household's rhythm keeps pulsing. More servants stir. A woman begins kneading bread, her hands sinking into the sticky dough, the soft thuds echoing through the courtyard. A young boy practices his writing on a wax tablet, scratching letters carefully with a stylus. The air is alive with the sounds of productivity, but without the frantic rush of alarm clocks and bus schedules. Everything has a pace, steady, deliberate. You take a final look around. The courtyard gleams in the rising sun, the fig tree's leaves shimmering gently. A chicken struts confidently along the edge of the room, utterly oblivious to your presence. Someone sneezes loudly, prompting a quick "Zeus bless you" from the next room, because even in antiquity, sneezes apparently demanded divine attention. There's a quirky scholarly debate that always amuses modern historians. Did ancient Greeks keep their animals, goats, chickens, even donkeys, closer to their living quarters than we imagine? Some archaeological evidence suggests small stables or pens attached to homes, while literary sources often portray livestock as being kept outside the urban core. The image of a chicken confidently wandering into the kitchen might not be so far-fetched after all. Satisfied that you've taken in the morning household atmosphere, you adjust your belt, tighten your sandal straps one last time, and head toward the door. You push it open and step into the narrow street beyond, carrying the warmth of the household with you. Behind you, life continues, grinding, weaving, kneading, gossiping. Ahead of you, the city waits, awake and buzzing. The threshold between home and street is more than just a doorway. It's the line between the private world of the oikos and the public world of the polis. In crossing it, you shift roles, becoming part of the collective heartbeat of Athens. The household fades behind you as the distant murmur of the agora begins to rise, a reminder that while home is the anchor, the city beyond is the stage where the day truly unfolds. The moment your sandals meet the dusty street outside the door, the city greets you like a living creature, stretching and yawning into the morning. The lane is narrow, barely wide enough for two people to pass without brushing shoulders, and the air is filled with the mingled sounds of a neighborhood waking up. Pots clink, donkeys snort, somewhere a hammer taps against wood. It's not noisy in the way of modern cities with their engines and horns. It's organic, a layered texture of small human and animal sounds that merge into something surprisingly soothing. You take your first few steps carefully. The street underfoot is uneven, a mix of packed earth and scattered paving stones. A shallow drainage channel runs down the center, catching the trickles from last night's washing and the early morning chores. You step over it instinctively. No one wants muddy sandals this early in the day. The walls of the houses on either side are tall and close, made from sun-baked mud brick or stone, often coated in white plaster to reflect the sun. Windows are small, sometimes just narrow slits with wooden shutters. Privacy here is more about walls than wide open vistas. As you pass, you catch snippets of household life through doorways left ajar. A woman ladling porridge into bowls, a boy practicing lines from Euripides, someone scolding a goat that's gotten too bold. The lane bends unpredictably, like it grew by accident rather than design, which, in a sense, it did. Ancient Greek cities weren't laid out on tidy grids, except in some colonies. They evolved organically, layer upon layer over centuries. Roads twist, turn, narrow, and widen with little warning. Historians still argue whether this was a matter of practical adaptation to terrain or simply the result of unplanned growth. Either way, if you're new here, you'd better follow someone who knows where they're going, or you'll end up circling the same fig tree 3 times. A neighbor shuffles past, balancing a basket of bread on her head. She nods at you in passing, too busy to chat, but not unfriendly. Behind her, a small boy trots after a donkey, pulling a cart piled high with amphorae, likely olive oil or wine headed toward the agora. The wooden wheels creak with each rotation, sending faint vibrations through the dusty ground. A rooster perched on a wall crows triumphantly, apparently late to his job this morning. You take a turn down a slightly wider street, one that slopes gently downward. In the distance, you can already glimpse the faint open space of the agora, the heart of the city, glimmering in the sun like a promise. But the walk there is part of the ritual. Every corner offers a little vignette of daily life. You pass a public fountain house where a small crowd is gathering. Women stand with their hydrii balanced gracefully on their shoulders, chatting as they wait for their turn at the spouts. The fountain stonework is smooth from centuries of hands. The water splashes into clay jars, each rhythm adding a musical note to the street's soundscape. A quirky tidbit, some wealthy Athenians employed water-fetching servants simply to avoid standing in line here. But many still preferred to send household members since the fountain was a social hub, perfect for catching up on neighborhood news. As you move along, the smells change. A baker's oven sends out a wave of warm, yeasty air, tinged with smoke. A man selling grilled fish from a brazier calls out his prices. He's been at the harbor since before dawn, and his voice is already hoarse. The salty tang of the sea drifts up the streets, mingling with the earthy scent of dust and the sharper notes of olive oil warming in pans. It's a sensory map of the city in motion. Ahead, a group of children run past, laughing, their bare feet slapping the stones. They carry little clay spinning tops, sending them whirring down the road. One of them almost crashes into your leg, but deftly swerves at the last second, shooting you a cheeky grin. Childhood hasn't changed all that much. It just involves fewer tablets and more improvised toys. You pass by a small shrine at a street corner, dedicated to Hermes. It's nothing grand, just a carved stone pillar with the god's face and a pile of offerings at the base. Olive branches, flowers, a small cake left from yesterday. Travelers and residents alike touch the pillar as they pass, a quick gesture for luck and safe passage. You brush your fingers against it too, feeling the cool stone under your fingertips. Historians still debate whether these shrines were more about genuine piety or community bonding, but in practice, they're both. Part ritual, part neighborhood tradition. A man pushing a cart of clay pots calls out cheerfully, advertising his wares. Some of the pots are simple storage jars. Others are decorated with black figure designs, warriors, gods, animals. You can't help but notice one with a rather ridiculous satyr dancing on it. Humor apparently makes it into the pottery as much as heroics do. A woman steps out of her doorway to inspect a jug, bargaining with practiced ease. The rhythmic back and forth of haggling is like a dance, polite, firm, a little theatrical. As you turn another corner, the streets grow busier. Foot traffic increases. Farmers bringing produce, craftsmen carrying tools, citizens wrapped in elegant hematia heading toward civic buildings. The crowd is a blend of accents and dialects. Athens attracts traders, travelers, and migrants from all over the Greek world. You overhear snatches of conversation about grain prices, a recent play at the theater, and the neighbor's scandalous new beard style. A mainstream historical fact anchors this moment. Athens at its height was home to tens of thousands of citizens, medics, resident foreigners, and slaves. Daily movement through the streets wasn't a trickle, it was a constant flow, sustaining a vibrant economy and culture. A quirky tidbit slides in as you pass a doorway. Hanging from the lintel is a garland of garlic and onions. While modern neighbors might hang fairy lights, Athenians sometimes hung these pungent decorations as protective charms against the evil eye. Whether they worked is debatable, but they did keep nosy passersby at bay. You stop briefly at a small crossroads where a philosopher is holding court. Well, more like blocking foot traffic while he expounds loudly on the nature of virtue. A few younger men nod seriously. One older man rolls his eyes and steps around. Philosophical debates here can happen anywhere, under a portico, in the market, or in the middle of a street where people are just trying to get to work. Historians still argue whether these impromptu sessions were widely tolerated or quietly resented. Judging by the look of the fish seller stuck behind the philosopher, perhaps a bit of both. The sun climbs higher, warming the walls and making the air shimmer faintly. Shadows shrink. You adjust your himation against the light and keep walking. The narrow streets begin to open up, the ground leveling out, and a breeze drifts in from the sea. The chatter grows louder, the donkey carts more frequent. You're nearing the Agora, the city's bustling center, a place where commerce, politics, religion, and gossip collide in glorious disarray. Before stepping fully into that vibrant chaos, you take one last glance over your shoulder. The twisting lanes behind you now hum with life, every doorway and alleyway playing its part in the city's daily overture. It's easy to imagine someone in another century walking the same path, sandals scuffing, breath mixing with the morning air, nerves tingling as they approach the beating heart of Athens. You turn forward again. The path widens, sunlight spills freely, and the sounds of the market rise like a chorus. Voices calling, animals bleating, merchants bargaining. It's time to leave the intimate maze of neighborhoods behind and step into the grand, messy stage where the polis truly lives. Stepping fully into the agora, you're immediately met by a wave of sound and movement so steady and layered, it almost feels like the pulse of a living organism. The open square spreads out before you, broad, sunlit, and buzzing with energy. The dusty ground is packed firm by countless feet, and the light bounces off whitewashed porticos and stone buildings, giving everything a soft, golden glow. In a city that often feels like a maze of narrow lanes and shaded courtyards, the agora is a sudden, dazzling expanse of space, both literal and symbolic. It is, in every sense, the beating heart of the polis. The layout is deceptively simple. An open rectangle lined with stoa, covered colonnades, where merchants, craftsmen, philosophers, and officials conduct their business. Statues of gods and heroes dot the square, standing tall on stone bases, their marble features worn smooth by time and the elements. Some are painted in bright pigments, reds, blues, and golds that have faded but still catch the sun. A large altar stands at one end, a reminder that commerce and religion here are intertwined. Prayers and bargains often happen in the same breath. As you walk toward the center, the soundscape envelops you. Merchants call out prices. Buyers haggle with good-natured persistence. Donkeys bray under heavy loads. Somewhere, a musician plucks a lyre to attract attention to his stall. The mingled scents are dizzying. Fresh bread, olive oil, dried herbs, grilled fish, wool, leather, and the faint tang of sweat and dust. It's chaotic, but in a rhythmic, almost hypnotic way. To your left, a pottery seller has arranged his wares with meticulous care. Rows of amphorae and craters stand like an army of elegant shapes. Black figure scenes wrap around their surfaces. Warriors fighting, gods feasting, satyrs dancing in merry drunkenness. A young woman inspects a small kylix, drinking cup, tapping it gently to test its soundness. The seller nods approvingly, offering a price. They haggle briefly, voices rising and falling like waves, before the exchange is sealed with a handshake. Transactions here are personal, contracts are spoken, not signed, and reputation carries more weight than paper. Across the way, a spice merchant fans the air toward passers-by, sending clouds of cinnamon, coriander, and cumin drifting through the agora. Spices are imported luxuries, carried on ships from the east, and their presence in this square is a reminder of Athens' vast trading network. A historian might point out that while Athens was famed for olive oil, pottery, and silver, its prosperity depended on these constant flows of foreign goods: grain from Egypt, timber from Macedonia, perfumes from Arabia. The agora isn't just a market, it's a microcosm of the Mediterranean economy. Not far from the spice merchant, a bronzesmith has set up a temporary forge under a stoa. Sparks leap as he hammers a small decorative plaque, sweat glistening on his forearms. A pair of boys watches with wide eyes, fascinated by the rhythm of metal on metal. He doesn't shoo them away. Craftsmen here often work in public, their labor itself a form of advertisement. If you like what you see, you step forward, name your price, and walk away with a custom piece, or commission one for later. As you wander deeper into the square, you notice that not everyone is here to buy or sell. Groups of men gather in circles, deep in conversation. Some are older, wrapped in carefully arranged himatia. Others are young, eager, gesturing animatedly. A philosopher, perhaps a student of Socrates, is holding an informal discussion about justice near one of the stoas. His voice is calm but firm, and the small crowd has formed around him, some genuinely listening, others just enjoying the spectacle. In ancient Athens, the agora is as much a place of ideas as it is of goods. Near the Bouleuterion, the council house, citizens cluster in small knots discussing political matters. Who will speak in the assembly today? How is the grain supply faring? What should be done about a border skirmish with a neighboring polis? Here, politics is not distant, it's personal and immediate. Anyone who is a citizen can raise questions, offer opinions, or simply listen. In a world without newspapers or television, this square is the city's newsfeed, bulletin board, and debate hall all at once. A small procession catches your eye. A priest and several attendants lead a sacrificial ceremony at the central altar. A goat, adorned with a wreath of leaves, is led calmly to the stone platform. A crowd gathers silently as the priest sprinkles barley, murmurs prayers, and makes the cut. The animal's blood is collected and poured out as an offering. The meat will be roasted and shared later. Religious acts like this punctuate the commercial day, blending sacred ritual with civic routine. Historians often note how religion was woven seamlessly into public life, not confined to temples, but present in markets, homes, and political spaces alike. Amid the bustle, you stop to observe a scribe at a small wooden table. He's surrounded by scrolls, ink pots, and wax tablets. A man dictates a letter to a distant relative, his words carefully recorded in neat looping script. Literacy isn't universal here, and scribes play a vital role as the written voice for those who can't write themselves. Some of these letters will travel hundreds of miles on ships, tucked between amphorae and bales of wool. For all the noise and activity of the agora, these quiet acts of writing are like threads binding distant lives together. A flute player begins to play near the fountain, his melody light and winding through the noise like a breeze. Children gather around him, clapping along. A few merchants smile and toss some coins. The agora is never silent, but sometimes a sound like this cuts through the din and lingers in the ear long after you've moved on. As the sun climbs higher, shadows retreat beneath the colonnades. The heat gathers in the square, shimmering off stone surfaces. Vendors pull light awnings across their stalls. Some step into the shade of stoas to rest. A water seller moves through the crowd with a large jug and wooden cups, offering cool drinks for a few obols. In an age without refrigeration, such a drink is both simple and precious. You pass by a notice board nailed to a wooden post near one of the buildings. Wax tablets display official announcements, upcoming festivals, court summonses, public notices. Literate citizens stop to read them aloud for others. A man points excitedly at one notice. A new dramatic competition is being held at the theater next month. His friend laughs, placing a mock bet on which playwright will win. Somewhere nearby, a heated argument breaks out between two merchants over the price of imported figs. The crowd briefly pauses, listening as accusations of unfair weights fly. Two magistrates approach to mediate, calm but firm. Such disputes are common, and the presence of officials in the agora ensures they rarely get out of hand. Justice here is public, often immediate, and woven into the fabric of daily life. Before you leave the square, you pause for a moment in the shade of a stoa and simply watch the ebb and flow. Farmers with baskets of produce arriving, traders unloading amphorae, citizens gathering news, children chasing each other, philosophers gesturing toward invisible ideals, priests sprinkling barley, scribes quietly scratching on wax tablets. It's a scene both ancient and deeply human. In modern terms, one might compare the agora to a market, parliament, temple, university, and cafe all rolled into one. A space where every layer of society overlaps and interacts. It's noisy, messy, alive, and utterly indispensable to the life of the city. As you step back toward the streets leading out, you carry with you not just the smell of spices or the sound of hammers, but the sense that here, in this sunlit square, the heartbeat of Athens can be heard most clearly. Every footstep on the dusty ground, every word traded between strangers, every ritual offering, together, they form the rhythm of an ancient world still echoing across time. You drift toward the edges of the agora, where the crowd thickens around rows of vendors displaying everything from humble barley loaves to shining imported trinkets. Here is where the real dance of buying and bargaining happens. Coins jingle, hands wave, eyebrows lift in disbelief at quoted prices. It's all part of the daily ritual. You tuck yourself into the flow, letting the human current pull you between stalls like a pebble in a stream. Your first stop is a bread seller, her stall shaded by a makeshift awning of woven reeds. She has arranged her loaves in careful stacks, some sprinkled with sesame seeds, others plain and golden from the oven. The air is thick with the smell of yeast and smoke, warm and comforting. Bread is the backbone of Greek diets, often made from barley rather than wheat, and most families buy their loaves daily. She calls out her price, 3 obols for a medium loaf. You raise your eyebrows, as everyone does. It's not quite a challenge, more like the opening move in a slow, familiar game. Haggling in ancient Greece isn't just about saving a few coins. It's a social performance, a subtle way of signaling wit, patience, and status. You counter with 2 obols and a grin, gesturing as if you're shocked by her audacity. She scoffs, rolls her eyes dramatically, and reminds you that grain prices rose after a bad shipment from Egypt last month. Historians still argue whether those price fluctuations were due more to actual scarcity or to clever middlemen taking advantage of panic. Either way, you settle on 2.5 obols with a shared laugh. The loaf is yours, wrapped in a strip of linen and handed over with practiced ease. A few stalls away, you approach a fishmonger whose voice rises above the hum like a trumpet. He's surrounded by slabs of marble smeared with salt and water, displaying an impressive variety. Sardines, eels, mullets, and even a few large tunas on ice brought in from Piraeus at dawn. The smell is potent. You wrinkle your nose slightly, but keep a polite face. Everyone does. Fresh fish is a prized commodity here, especially for wealthier households and symposium feasts. The fishmonger slices open a sardine to prove its freshness, the flesh gleaming. He quotes a price per weight using stone counterweights on a bronze scale. Some wealthier buyers send slaves to haggle for them, but there's something satisfying about handling the negotiation yourself, feeling the pulse of the market. You tuck the fish into a small clay jar filled with brine to keep it fresh, like a seasoned local. Next, your attention is caught by a pottery merchant with shelves of amphorae and drinking cups painted in crisp black figure scenes. His hands are stained with clay, evidence that these are not just wares he sells, they are the products of his own kiln. You admire a crater depicting Heracles wrestling a lion. He notices your gaze and begins his practiced pitch, pointing out the evenness of the glaze and the clean lines. Pottery like this isn't just functional, it's a kind of storytelling. Families pass down amphorae for generations, and symposium hosts show off their best pieces as symbols of taste and wealth. You ask for the price, knowing full well it will be higher than your morning bread. He quotes something that makes you give a long, exaggerated sigh. Part genuine, part theatrical. He chuckles. You counter with a lower offer, pointing out a faint chip near the base. He tilts his head, pretends to be offended, then sighs too, as if giving in against his better judgment. You meet in the middle. Coins change hands, another dance complete. Nearby, a fabric seller unfurls bolts of linen and wool dyed in muted earth tones and rare purples for those with deep pockets. The texture of the linen is surprisingly soft beneath your fingers. Some buyers test the weave by holding the fabric up to the sunlight. The tighter the weave, the less light passes through. Others sniff the cloth, checking for signs of improper dyeing or storage. One woman pinches a bolt between her fingers and launches into an animated haggling session that gathers an amused audience. This isn't just commerce, it's public theater. While most bargaining revolves around practical goods, some stalls sell more unexpected items. A man with a small cart offers perfume stored in alabaster bottles. He uncorks one, releasing a swirl of myrrh and rose. Perfume is expensive, sometimes mixed with olive oil and often used in religious rituals or romantic pursuits. The vendor claims the recipe was handed down from a priestess at Delphi. Whether that's true or just marketing flair, who can say? Just a few stalls away, another merchant is offering something you didn't expect: crocodile dung mixed with oil. You overhear him advertising it loudly as a miraculous sunscreen, a curious Egyptian export. Historians still argue whether Greeks actually used such mixtures for protection or whether it was more of a novelty for curious elites. Either way, you politely decline the free sample. Some ancient trends are better admired from a distance. As you weave between the stalls, you notice the etiquette of bargaining is subtle but consistent. It's considered rude to accept the first price outright. It makes you look inexperienced. It's also bad form to haggle too aggressively over minor sums. No one wants to be that person who argues endlessly over a single obol. And while raised voices are common, genuine anger is rare. Most disputes end with smiles or exaggerated sighs, not actual hostility. Bargaining here is almost like an ancient version of flirting, playful, strategic, and governed by unspoken rules. You pause at a small olive oil stall, watching the seller pour golden liquid into ceramic jugs. Olive oil isn't just food here, it's currency, moisturizer, lamp fuel, and a central part of religious rituals. The quality varies widely, and experienced buyers can judge by smell alone. You lean in to take a whiff. Fresh, grassy, almost fruity. Excellent quality. The seller nods approvingly, as if you passed a secret test. A quirky side scene unfolds nearby. Two men are arguing not about price, but about the shape of amphorae. One insists that wider bases store wine better. The other argues for narrow neck designs. A small crowd forms, half amused, half genuinely interested. Ancient Greeks took their containers seriously. After all, how else are you going to transport a year's worth of olive oil without a perfectly shaped vessel? Throughout this bustling choreography, coins clink constantly. Small, round silver drachmae and obols, sometimes exchanged for goods, sometimes weighed to confirm authenticity. Counterfeiters were a real problem, and savvy merchants knew how to spot subtle differences in weight and engraving. Some preferred bartering altogether, especially in smaller towns or rural areas, trading sacks of grain for amphorae or oil instead of coins. Historians still debate exactly how standardized prices were across the city. Some argue that informal networks kept things relatively stable. Others believe prices fluctuated wildly depending on supply ships, politics, and personal relationships. What's clear as you stand in the agora is that the human element is always front and center. It's not just about numbers, it's about relationships, trust, and ritualized negotiation. By the time you finish your morning errands, your small linen bag is heavier. Bread, fish, a few olives, maybe a modest crater wrapped carefully to avoid chips. Your purse is lighter, but your spirit feels curiously uplifted. Bargaining, with all its noise and ritual, isn't tiring, it's enlivening, almost like participating in the heartbeat of the city. As you step back from the stalls, you glance once more over the sea of merchants and buyers. Everyone here plays their part in an ancient economic symphony. The farmers who grew the grain, the sailors who brought the spices, the craftsmen who shape the pots, the buyers who keep it all in motion. The agora isn't just a market, it's a living classroom in human interaction, one negotiation at a time. You linger near the center of the agora, where the steady hum of commerce gives way to a different kind of energy, one of public life, news, and politics. If the market stalls are the city's stomach, this part of the square is its mouth and ears. Messages are proclaimed, debates spark in clusters, and the flow of information here is as crucial as the flow of bread and fish. The stone beneath your sandals is warm now, the sun climbing higher, and the light falls sharp across the colonnades. The air hums with anticipation, as if the city itself is leaning forward to listen. A herald stands on a raised platform, a simple block of stone polished smooth by countless feet. His voice, trained for clarity, cuts through the chatter like a clean breeze. "Hear ye, citizens of Athens!" He announces an upcoming assembly session at the Pnyx, the agenda scrawled in ink on thin papyrus. The list includes grain imports, a proposal to repair part of the long walls, and a rather heated question about raising new taxes to fund a naval project. A few men nearby groan softly at the word taxes. Some things never change. This is how public information travels in a city without newspapers, radios, or smartphones, through the human voice projected into the agora. Heralds are the original notification alerts. Scribes post official announcements on wooden boards and wax tablets, but for most citizens, many of whom can't read, these spoken proclamations are the main way to keep up. You notice people nudging each other, repeating key details to friends, or breaking off into mini debates right on the spot. One group of citizens, wrapped in their himatia with casual elegance, gathers around the scribe reading out legal notices. These are summonses for court cases, announcements of property disputes, and public decrees. One notice involves a merchant accused of using false weights on his bronze scale, a serious offense in a city that values fair trade. A man in the crowd shakes his head, muttering that he bought olives from that stall just last week. A younger fellow laughed and says maybe he got a discount he didn't deserve. The scribe doesn't look up, continuing his recitation with measured calm. Nearby, a group of older men debate whether the assembly should fund the naval project. One insists that a strong fleet is Athens' lifeline, recalling the glory of Salamis. Another retorts that the citizens are tired of constant levies and that the walls need repair before any more ships are built. Their voices rise and fall like waves, drawing in curious passers-by. Someone cracks a joke about the ships being better at swallowing taxes than sailing, and the crowd bursts into laughter. Even political debates here often carry a vein of dry, communal humor. You move closer to a stoa, where a crowd is gathering for a less official kind of announcement. A traveling bard is spreading news from distant cities, a minor revolt in a northern polis, rumors of a new trading route through the Black Sea, and whispers of philosophical debates in Ionia. Bards and traders often double as unofficial news networks, carrying stories on their tongues the way ships carry grain. Historians still argue whether these traveling storytellers exaggerated events to keep their audiences hooked, or whether they were genuinely reliable sources. Either way, their presence in the agora keeps the world beyond the city's walls vividly alive. A young man climbs onto a low step and begins reading aloud from a new political pamphlet, handwritten and copied several times by eager supporters. His voice trembles slightly at first, but grows stronger as a small crowd gathers. He's advocating for a change in how certain magistrates are chosen, a hot topic judging by the murmurs. Some nod in agreement, others cross their arms skeptically. This isn't a formal speech at the Pnyx, but the agora is the rehearsal stage for bigger political performances. Here, anyone with courage and a sharp tongue can test their ideas in front of their peers. Just beyond this gathering, a public notice board displays upcoming festivals. A herald has posted the schedule for the next Dionysia, with processions, plays, and competitions listed. Someone nearby reads the schedule aloud to a group of friends, excitedly debating which playwright will win the tragic competition this year. Sophocles, Euripides, or perhaps a daring newcomer who'll surprise everyone. The crowd's buzz grows, their voices weaving into a lively tapestry of speculation. It's politics, but it's also cultural gossip, and the line between the two is blurred in Athens. You wander past a small cluster of women, less common in this part of the agora, but not absent. They lean toward a herald reading out a decree about an upcoming religious procession. Participation in these events is civic duty as much as spiritual observance. One woman clutches a basket of offerings, nodding along as the herald describes the route through the city streets, the songs to be sung, and the timing of the sacrifices. Public notices like this bind the city together, making sure everyone, from merchants to priestesses, moves to the same rhythm. An especially lively debate catches your ear. Two citizens are arguing over a recent court ruling about property inheritance. One claims the decision was just, the other believes the jury was swayed by personal loyalties. Juries here are made up of ordinary citizens, sometimes in the hundreds, chosen by lot. It's an extraordinary experiment in democracy, but not without its controversies. Historians still argue whether Athenian juries truly reflected the will of the people or were prone to factional manipulation. Either way, these conversations show that law is not a distant, elite affair. It's woven into everyday chatter. Then, in the middle of all this serious talk, something more lighthearted happens. A young man leaps onto a stone block and begins reciting a comedic verse mocking a local politician's bad haircut. The crowd erupts in laughter. Political satire is alive and well in Athens, not just on theater stages, but in the streets themselves. Even those who disagree politically can share a laugh at a well-aimed joke. Further along, a public orator is warming up. You can tell by the way he clears his throat, adjusts his hemation just so, and climbs onto a low platform with practiced ease. He launches into a short but fiery speech about grain imports, gesturing toward the harbor as if he's already addressing the assembly. He's not a professional politician, there's no such thing here, but he's clearly hoping to build a reputation as someone eloquent and persuasive. The crowd listens, some genuinely interested, others evaluating his technique like seasoned critics at a play. He'll need to breathe between sentences if he ever wants to finish a speech at the Pnyx. The neighbor chuckles softly. Not all public notices are grand or political. A small wooden board lists lost property announcements, a goat that wandered off near the potter's quarter, a bronze ring dropped by the fountain, a missing sandal strap. People crowd around, scanning the scribbles, laughing at some of the stranger items. A man beside you mutters that someone once posted a notice for a runaway tortoise. You imagine the slowest chase in history and can't help but smile. As midday approaches, the political buzz begins to merge back into the commercial rhythm. Heralds roll up their scrolls, scribes pack away their tablets, and the crowds thin as people head home for lunch or retreat to shaded stoas. The agora never truly quiets, but its tone shifts, less proclamation, more casual chatter. You realize that these public announcements and debates are not occasional spectacles, they are daily rituals, as essential to Athenian life as buying bread or lighting incense. Before stepping away, you pause for a moment and watch a final scene. Two boys sitting at the edge of a stoa, mimicking the gestures of an orator they watched earlier. One raises his arm dramatically, the other interrupts with a sarcastic comment that makes nearby adults laugh. Even in play, the rhythms of civic life are absorbed, passed down like songs or recipes. In this city, everyone is part of the conversation, whether as speaker, listener, or cheeky commentator. As you turn toward the quieter streets leading to the temples, the echoes of the herald's voices follow you, mingling with the scent of olives and the distant pluck of a lyre. The city has spoken its news, its arguments, its jokes, and now the day moves on. Leaving the lively debates and proclamations behind, you follow a narrow street that winds gently away from the agora, leading toward a cluster of temples and shrines. The noise of the market fades slowly, like a chorus stepping back from the stage, replaced by a softer soundscape. Sandals on stone, murmured prayers, the occasional flutter of doves. The sun has climbed higher, its light clear and unwavering, making the white marble structures ahead glow almost as if lit from within. The transition is gradual but unmistakable. You've moved from the pulse of civic life into the spiritual heartbeat of the city. The first temple you approach is modest, tucked between two larger buildings. Its stone walls are worn smooth by centuries of weather, and the garland of fresh flowers drapes across its entrance. A thin column of frankincense smoke curls upward, carrying with it a warm, resinous aroma that lingers in your nose and clings faintly to your clothes. Worshippers stand in small clusters, some whispering private petitions, others simply resting in the shade. Unlike the bustling agora, no one here is in a rush. Time seems to stretch out softly, as if the gods prefer their visitors to arrive unhurried. A woman in a simple himation approaches the altar carrying a basket of barley and honey cakes, her movements careful and deliberate. She sprinkles barley grains on the altar before placing the cakes in a shallow bowl, then steps back, bows her head, and whispers something only the gods will hear. Her offering is humble, but in this world, even small gestures matter. Temples aren't places for loud displays or dramatic conversions. They're woven into everyday routines, as natural as stopping by the market or greeting a neighbor. You light a small oil lamp and set it near the steps of the altar, watching the flame flicker briefly before steadying itself. The warmth against your fingertips is grounding. Historians still argue whether these personal offerings were primarily acts of deep faith or more like a form of divine networking, ensuring the gods stayed favorably inclined toward your household. Realistically, it's probably both. After all, in a city where disease, storms, and war are never far away, a little divine goodwill is a practical investment. A priest passes by, a middle-aged man with a carefully trimmed beard and a linen robe tied neatly at the waist. He moves with quiet authority, greeting worshippers with nods rather than speeches. His role isn't to sermonize, but to maintain the rituals, keep the altars clean, tend to the sacred fires, and oversee sacrifices when necessary. Priests here aren't set apart in the same way they are in some later traditions. They're part of the civic fabric, often holding temporary posts as citizens rather than living in religious seclusion. You wander a bit farther and arrive at a larger temple dedicated to Athena. Its towering columns rise like a stone forest, their fluted shafts catching the light in alternating bands of brightness and shadow. The pediment sculptures above depict a mythic battle, Athena in full stride, spear raised, surrounded by figures whose poses are so fluid they almost seem to breathe. Traces of once brilliant paint linger in crevices, blues, reds, and golds that hint at how dazzling this temple must have looked when newly built. Modern eyes are used to bare marble, but in its prime, Greek architecture was a riot of color, not the serene monochrome we often imagine. The entrance is lined with tripods and bronze votive offerings, each inscribed with names and brief dedications. Some are simple, to Athena for safe return. Others are more elaborate, praising victories in athletic contests or naval battles. A few have curious shapes, miniature ships, animals, or stylized body parts, offerings made in thanks for healed limbs or successful journeys. One quirky bronze plaque depicts a goat wearing a laurel crown. You can't help but smirk. Perhaps someone had an unusually victorious goat. Inside the temple's inner chamber, it's noticeably cooler and darker. The stone walls absorb sound, muting footsteps into a soft hush. A colossal statue of Athena dominates the space, gleaming with gold and ivory, her gaze serene yet commanding. Worshippers approach one by one, laying offerings at her feet, coins, wreaths, small clay figurines. Some touch the base of the statue lightly before stepping away, as if brushing fingers against divine presence. A priestess tends a perpetual flame in a large bronze brazier, adding oil with practiced motions. The fire never goes out. It's a symbol of the goddess's constant watch over the city. Historians still debate whether the priestesses who tended such flames were chosen primarily for their family status, their piety, or simply through lot, like other civic roles. Regardless, their presence lends the temple a quiet rhythm, a steady heartbeat in stone. As you step back outside, sunlight spills across the courtyard, making the marble almost blinding. Worshippers linger here too, not just inside. Some are tying ribbons to small trees planted near the temple entrance, each ribbon bearing whispered wishes or thanks. Others are seated on stone benches, sharing figs or bits of bread, enjoying the shade. Temples aren't only places of worship, they're social spaces, places to meet, to rest, and to fold the sacred gently into daily life. Across the street, you spot a shrine to Hermes, smaller and more informal. A simple stone pillar carved with his likeness stands at the corner, a pile of smooth pebbles at its base. Passers-by toss a stone onto the pile as they go by, muttering quick prayers for safe travel or good fortune. These herms, as they're called, are scattered throughout the city, marking crossroads and doorways. They're so common that one drunken vandalism spree centuries ago, when someone defaced many of them overnight, caused a full-blown political scandal. Imagine the uproar if someone vandalized all the stop signs in your neighborhood at once. That's roughly the vibe. You decide to make a small offering at Hermes' shrine. Picking up a rounded stone, you rub it briefly for luck. It's smooth from countless other hands. Then place it carefully on the pile. There's no priest watching, no grand ritual, just a quiet moment shared with countless anonymous travelers who've passed here before you. Further on, you approach a fountain house, a structure both practical and sacred. Fresh spring water flows constantly from stone spouts shaped like lion heads, trickling into a long basin where women fill clay jars. The water is cool to the touch, a welcome relief after walking through sunlit streets. Nearby, a small altar is dedicated to nymphs and river deities. A few flowers float in the water, offerings to the spirits believed to dwell within it. Historians still argue whether the reverence for fountains was more religious or simply born from gratitude for clean water in a hot climate. Either way, the ritual persists. Take water, offer thanks. A few philosophers stroll past, deep in conversation about the nature of the divine. One gestures toward the temple roofs, arguing that the gods reside in the heavens. The other points to the people making offerings, insisting the divine is found in human actions. They're so engrossed in their debate that they almost bump into a goat tethered nearby. The goat looks unimpressed. You stifle a laugh. As the sun reaches its zenith, the temple precinct grows busier. Worshippers arrive in small groups, some bearing larger animals for upcoming sacrifices. A young boy leads a sheep adorned with a wreath of olive leaves, its fleece brushed clean for the occasion. A priest oversees the preparations, ensuring the animal is calm and the ritual tools are ready. Sacrifices here aren't spectacles of cruelty, but communal feasts. The gods receive the smoke and certain portions, while the rest is cooked and shared among participants. It's religion intertwined with barbecue, civic duty, and dinner all at once. Before leaving, you take a moment to stand at the top of the temple steps, looking out over the city. The agora lies in the distance, still humming faintly. Beyond it, houses cluster together like terracotta shells. The sea glimmers on the horizon. From here, the layers of daily life, market, politics, worship unfold like a map, each connected to the other by footpaths, rituals, and shared rhythms. You step back onto the street, carrying with you the faint scent of incense and the echo of whispered prayers. The gods may be distant or ever-present. Historians still debate that too. But their presence is woven into every corner of the city. Whether through grand temples or humble herms, through sacrifices or pebbles on a pile, the divine accompanies you like a quiet second shadow.
Leaving the temple precinct behind, you follow a sloping street that curves gently toward the outskirts of the city. The sunlight is warm but no longer harsh, glancing off whitewashed walls and bouncing into narrow lanes. The air changes subtly here, less incense, more olive groves and earth. The soundscape shifts too. The rhythmic scrape of sandals is joined by the occasional bark of a dog, the bray of a donkey, and the faint swish of water being poured from amphorae. You're heading toward the public baths, one of the most quietly essential spaces in the daily rhythm of ancient Greek life.
You pass through a modest stone archway into a courtyard where a few men sit on low benches, chatting lazily while removing their sandals. There's no sense of hurry. Bathing is a social ritual, not a quick in-and-out affair. The air inside the bath complex is cooler than outside, thanks to thick stone walls and an open roof that lets in light but not too much heat. The place has the echoey calm of a gym mixed with the intimate atmosphere of a neighborhood cafe. To your left, a large cistern filled with fresh water gleams in the sunlight. It's fed by an aqueduct that snakes down from the hills, a marvel of engineering that keeps the city supplied. Water flows continuously through spouts shaped like lion heads, gurgling into basins. The sound is hypnotic, steady, like background music for the body. You dip your fingers in. It's cold and startlingly clear. Historians still argue whether most people bathe daily or just occasionally, especially since water could be scarce in some seasons. But here, in this well-maintained city, public baths are a regular part of the routine, especially for men. You move toward the changing area, where bathers undress and leave their clothes in small niches carved into the wall. A young attendant watches over the garments to prevent theft. There's a slightly mischievous rumor that attendants sometimes borrowed nicer cloaks, wearing them briefly before returning them exactly as found. Whether that's true or not, you tuck your tunic away carefully and step onto the smooth stone floor barefoot. It's warm underfoot, polished by countless feet before yours. The bathing process unfolds in several stages. First, you walk into a room where cool water is ladled over your body to rinse away the dust of the streets. A burly man with a wide grin splashes his friend with extra enthusiasm, earning a chorus of good-natured groans. You take a bronze strigil, a curved scraping tool, and gently run it along your arms and legs to remove sweat and dirt. There's something oddly satisfying about the simple, tactile rhythm of scraping. It's not glamorous, but it's effective. A quirky tidbit, some athletes would mix the collected sweat and oil into small jars and sell it as a sort of miracle cosmetic, claiming it had invigorating properties. Whether that's true or just ancient marketing, historians still argue about that too. Next, you step into a tepid room, where the air is comfortably warm but not stifling. A few older men recline against stone benches, discussing the latest philosophical theories or city gossip. One man claims to have seen a comet streak across the sky the night before. Another insists it was just a trick of the light reflecting off the sea. Their debate drifts lazily through the room like steam, punctuated by chuckles. Bathhouses are as much about conversation and community as they are about cleanliness. Deals are struck here, friendships forged, and arguments hashed out over warm water and olive oil. An attendant approaches with a small amphora of oil. He pours a thin stream into your hands. It's fragrant with herbs, maybe rosemary or thyme. You rub it over your skin, feeling the warmth of your body coax the scent upward. There's no soap here as modern audiences would expect. Instead, oil loosens grime, which is then scraped off again with the strigil. It's a glossy, low-tech spa routine and surprisingly effective. The smell is both grounding and invigorating, mingling with the stone and water. You wander into the warmest chamber, where steam gathers thickly near the ceiling. A small furnace tucked beneath the floor channels heat through clay pipes, warming the room, a technique that feels surprisingly modern. The floor radiates a gentle heat that seeps into your muscles. You lean against the smooth wall and let your breathing slow. This isn't just hygiene, it's restoration.
After walking, trading, praying, and debating all morning, this is where the city collectively exhales. Across the room, a group of younger men are mock wrestling, slipping and laughing as they practice holds. Their teacher watches, occasionally shouting pointers. Wrestling here isn't just a sport, it's tied to ideas of discipline and virtue. There's even a saying that you can tell a man's character by how he conducts himself in the palestra, the wrestling ground. You're content to observe though. One over-enthusiastic lunge ends in a graceless splash into a shallow pool, and everyone bursts into laughter. You step briefly into a cold plunge pool at the end of the bathing sequence. The water is bracing, like being dunked into melted snow. It sends a shiver through your whole body, but afterward, you feel alert, your skin tingling pleasantly. Some bathers skip the step, preferring to linger in the warmth. Others swear by it as essential for health. Historians still argue whether this was more about medical beliefs or simply personal preference. Whatever the reason, you emerge refreshed, like hitting the reset button after a long day. Nearby, a barber surgeon has set up a small corner. He trims beards, cleans nails, and occasionally performs minor medical procedures, everything from lancing boils to pulling teeth. You watch a man getting a particularly stylish curl worked into his beard, while another nervously eyes the barber's bronze instruments. Hygiene, grooming, and minor healthcare all blur together here. And yes, there's probably at least one guy loudly complaining that barbers were better in the old days. Some things never change. Before you leave, you pass through a courtyard where masseurs work, rubbing oil into tired muscles. You lie down briefly on a wooden table while an older attendant with hands like iron kneads your shoulders. The mix of firm pressure and warm oil eases away the tension from the morning's wanderings. It's easy to see why people linger here, not just for physical comforts, but because the baths are a liminal space between public life and private life, between the bustling agora and the quiet home. As you redress, a young man strikes up a conversation about the upcoming festival. He wants to know if you'll attend the athletic contests or the evening symposiums. His tone is casual, but this kind of chit-chat is how networks are built. In a world without phones or social media, the baths are the original newsfeed, where whispers travel fast and reputations are quietly made. You step back into the sunlight, skin still warm from the steam, hair smelling faintly of herbs. The city feels slightly different after bathing, sharper, cleaner, as if your senses have been polished along with your skin. A gentle breeze carries the scent of roasting chickpeas from a nearby stall, reminding you that lunch might be in order soon. But before that, there's more of the city to explore. As you walk away, you glance back once more at the bathhouse courtyard. Men are still arriving, chatting as they remove their sandals. Steam drifts lazily upward, curling like a contented sigh. These baths are more than a place to get clean. They're where the city's pulse slows, where the dust of the streets is washed away and replaced with conversation, camaraderie, and the occasional questionable beard curl. Stepping out of the bathhouse and back into the sun-warmed streets, you notice a shift in tempo. The earlier energy of the agora is softened by the calm lull after midday. People are moving more deliberately now, carrying baskets, checking their scrolls, or seeking shade under colonnades. You take a deep breath, savoring the warm air scented faintly with olive oil, baking bread, and distant herbs. And let your feet carry you toward the local tavern and cafe spaces where Athenians take a moment to refresh and socialize after morning routines. The tavern, or kapeleion as some call it, has a modest stone facade with an open entrance. The wooden door swings easily on its hinges, revealing a low-ceilinged room filled with a mixture of aromas: wine, roasted chickpeas, a hint of smoky oil lamps, and the tang of pressed grapes from nearby barrels. The interior is cool, dimmer than the sunlit streets outside, with benches and small tables scattered across the floor. Some patrons lean lazily against stone walls, others huddle over low wooden tables in animated conversation.
It's less formal than the agora, less ritualized than the bathhouse, yet no less important, a small corner of everyday life and social bonding. A man behind the counter pours wine from a clay jug into shallow cups, offering generous smiles and nods to familiar faces. The wine is usually diluted with water, as drinking it straight is considered extreme or uncivilized for daytime consumption. A young boy delivers trays of salted fish, olives, and dried bread, the clatter of clay cups punctuating the hum of conversation. You take a seat on a bench near the window, letting the warmth and subtle clamor envelop you. There's a peculiar comfort in the simplicity of it. Human voices, smells, and tactile surroundings all entwined. You strike up a quiet observation of those gathered here. A small group of merchants is counting coins, comparing profits from morning trades. One points to a series of amphorae he sold, boasting about the flawless black figure detailing. His friend teases him about exaggerating quality, and laughter rises like a musical refrain. Nearby, an older woman whispers advice about olive oil quality to her daughter, pointing to jars and sniffing lightly. Even in the relatively relaxed environment of a tavern, commerce continues to thread through social life, inextricable from conversation. At another table, two men are playing a strategy game on a small wooden board. The pieces are carved from bone, slightly worn, and the game looks like a prototype of Petea, a popular board game in the city. Moves are deliberate, but playful jibes accompany each choice. "You'll regret that," one exclaims, grinning. The other responds, mock offended, before carefully repositioning a piece. Such games serve as practice for thinking strategically, useful not just for play, but also for debate, negotiation, and even military planning. Historians still argue whether these games were designed purely for amusement or as mental exercises for citizens, but clearly, both functions coexist in the tavern's cozy atmosphere. You reach for a small cup of water mixed with wine, the tangy, lightly fermented flavor of familiar comfort. While drinking, you notice a poet reciting verses in a quiet corner. His voice is low and deliberate, and although only a handful of patrons stop to listen, you catch the rhythm of his lines. He is improvising, drawing on local tales and anecdotes about recent events, peppering his verses with gentle humor. One line references the market earlier, a merchant so obsessed with exact weights that he measured even the shadow of the amphora. A few people chuckle quietly. Satire in taverns is subtle, often sly, but the effect lingers longer than a loud proclamation ever could. Near the entrance, a slave girl carries a tray of chickpeas roasted with herbs, her bare feet slipping lightly on the stone floor. Patrons reach eagerly, exchanging coins or small gestures of thanks. These simple snacks, humble as they are, bind the space together. Food here isn't about extravagance, it's about connection. You notice that the act of sharing, even if by purchase, is itself a kind of social glue, knitting together community members of various statuses in one space. Some historians suggest these taverns were proto-social clubs, blurring lines between class, occupation, and gender, although women were still a rare sight inside. A quirky scene unfolds as a man struggles to light an oil lamp. The wick flares briefly, producing a tiny plume of smoke, then dies out. He mutters under his breath, prompting a nearby youth to comment that even the gods must laugh at his fumbling. Everyone nearby snickers, and the lamp finally catches after a moment of collective patience. Humor, it seems, thrives even in mundane domestic or semi-public spaces. Outside, through the open doorway, you can see children playing near the street, chasing each other with scraps of cloth and laughter ringing faintly into the tavern. Their games mimic adult patterns. One group forms a council debating rules. Another stages a mock market, exchanging pebbles for imaginary goods. It's easy to see how the lessons of civic life, commerce, and ritual seep into daily play, training the next generation even in leisure. At a side table, a group of craftsmen discusses a new project. One is designing a small bronze statue for a temple dedication. Another is debating a new method of engraving letters on clay. Their chatter is technical yet lively, and a young apprentice listens intently, occasionally adding questions. This blending of work talk with casual socializing reflects a city where professional expertise and personal interaction coexist seamlessly. You sip your wine-water mixture again, letting the flavor settle and your thoughts drift. Patrons come and go, yet the space feels timeless. The combination of food, drink, conversation, and quiet observation creates a rhythm that is calming, gentle, almost hypnotic. There's no urgency here, only the interplay of human presence in a shared environment, each person adding to a low hum that fills the room like a warm blanket. At one point, a storyteller begins recounting an anecdote from a recent symposium. A man who fell asleep mid-discussion and woke with a toga wrapped tightly around his head. The room bursts into soft laughter, and even the bartender shakes his head with amusement. This mixture of humor and observation, of private moment and communal sharing, is typical of such spaces. Scholars still debate the extent to which taverns shaped public opinion, but it's clear that ideas traveled as easily as wine.
You glance out the doorway, watching a line of travelers pause briefly, adjusting tunics and sandals before moving onward. The tavern serves them as it serves locals, a resting point, a source of nourishment, and a quiet place to gather thoughts before continuing. The scene is ordinary, mundane even, yet profoundly human. In Athens, every small space contributes to the pulse of civic and social life. Whether it's a grand stoa, a bustling market, a sacred temple, or this humble tavern. Finally, you rise from your bench, finishing your cup and tucking a few leftover chickpeas into your linen bag. The warmth of the room, the smells, the sounds all linger in your memory like a gentle echo. Stepping back into the sunlit street, you carry with you the subtle rhythms of the tavern. Conversation, laughter, games, and the quiet satisfaction of shared presence. It's a pause in the day, a small interlude of comfort and reflection, and one more thread woven into the tapestry of Athenian life. Leaving the tavern behind, you begin a leisurely stroll through the sun-dappled streets, heading toward the heart of Athenian social life, the Symposium. The roads here are narrower, less formal, lined with modest houses and occasional shops. You pass a butcher stall where slabs of fresh meat are carefully arranged on stone tables, and the rich aroma of roasted herbs lingers from earlier preparations. A small dog sniffs eagerly, nudging a discarded bone. This isn't the bustling hub of the agora, but the rhythm of the city is still alive, a quieter, more intimate beat as people move toward the afternoon's communal rituals. Soon, you arrive at the entrance to a symposium hall, its threshold guarded by a pair of stone lions, worn smooth by generations of feet and hands brushing past. Inside, the air is dim and cool, scented faintly with wine, oil, and the faint tang of incense. Cushions and low couches are arranged around the central space where conversation, debate, and entertainment will unfold. This is a world of controlled intimacy, where the city's public life gives way to private indulgence and intellectual play. You step inside and immediately notice the careful attention to seating arrangements. Hosts reserve the best positions for esteemed guests or those whose opinions they wish to flatter. Lesser acquaintances occupy the peripheries, and slaves hover in the shadows, ready to pour wine, bring food, or adjust cushions. The hierarchy here is subtle yet clear, an unspoken choreography that shapes the entire evening. You slide onto a cushion near the center, feeling the soft fabric beneath you, and allow your eyes to wander across the gathering. The host arrives with a modest entourage, carrying small jugs of wine, trays of olives, cheese, bread, and thinly sliced cured meats. In a deliberate gesture, the wine is poured into shallow cups and diluted with water, the ratio a subject of endless debates among philosophers and convivial companions alike. You take a sip, the tang of fermented grapes softened by the clear water,
leaving a faint sweetness that lingers pleasantly. Historians still argue whether heavy dilution was primarily practical for moderation or part of a cultural performance of civility. Either way, the ritual of drinking is deliberate, measured, almost meditative. A poet or musician begins to recite lines softly, accompanied by the gentle strum of a lyre. The melody is hypnotic, weaving a subtle background to the murmured conversations. Some guests close their eyes, letting the music guide them, while others quietly critique the meter or rhythm. Even in these intimate gatherings, learning and discourse are inseparable from pleasure. The symposium is simultaneously social, intellectual, and sensory, a space where ideas and experience mingle freely. Conversation flows around you like a living current. One man is recounting a story from the market earlier, embellishing details for comic effect. A neighbor responds with a clever rejoinder, and laughter ripples across the room. Nearby, a young man argues passionately about a philosophical principle, gesturing with one hand while the other cradles a cup. The discussion shifts between serious debates and playful mockery, the line between the two deliberately porous, encouraging wit, attentiveness, and subtle flattery. You sip your wine again, letting the warmth spread through you, blending with the relaxed hum of talk. Food arrives in measured portions. Olives glisten, cheese is sliced into thin, delicate triangles, and small rounds of bread are passed from hand to hand. A plate of figs and dates appears, their natural sweetness a gentle counterpoint to the saltier flavors. Eating here is not hurried. It is deliberate, almost ceremonial, a quiet celebration of shared abundance. You notice that even the act of passing a dish is a form of social negotiation. Whose hand reaches first, how the food is offered, subtle glances exchanged, all part of the ongoing dance of civility and recognition. A guest begins to recite a playful poem, poking gentle fun at a neighbor's recent misadventures, including a tumble at the baths and a misquoted law in the agora. The humor is light, teasing but affectionate. Laughter follows, low and rolling, blending seamlessly with the rhythm of conversation. This is one of the symposium's understated powers. It creates a space where social bonds are strengthened through humor and shared observation, a subtle weaving of community cohesion that persists far beyond the evening. The topic inevitably turns to philosophy and civic matters, as it always does. One speaker asserts a principle about justice, referencing the city's recent court decisions, while another counters with examples from other city-states. A quiet debate arises, punctuated by pauses for sips of wine and bites of bread. You notice the ebb and flow. Serious ideas are interspersed with humor, gossip, and personal anecdotes. It's a rhythm that feels almost musical, a conversation structured as performance and reflection simultaneously. Nearby, a young man leans forward, proposing a new approach to a local political question. He uses a carefully chosen analogy, comparing city governance to the precise balance required in a well-tended olive grove. His words are met with nods and murmurs, some laughter at the unexpected metaphor. Scholars still argue how influential symposium conversations were on actual political decisions, but there's no doubt that ideas circulated, refined, and gained momentum here, in these intimate settings, far from formal halls or public assemblies. An attendant quietly brings a small tray of sweet honey cakes. Their aroma is delicate but intoxicating, and they are passed hand to hand. The act of offering food, simple as it is, reinforces social hierarchy and mutual respect. The host ensures that each participant is acknowledged, that no one is overlooked. Even in a relaxed space, these subtle cues maintain order, guiding behavior with invisible threads of civility and ritual. A lyre player changes the tune, shifting to a slower, more contemplative melody. Conversations soften, laughter quiets, and attention drifts toward the music. You feel a gentle weight of relaxation settle into your shoulders and spine. The room's energy becomes more fluid, more introspective. Here, at the heart of the symposium, time feels elastic. Moments stretch, conversations linger, and the boundary between public performance and private reflection blurs. You notice a particularly quaint custom. Some guests pour a small amount of wine onto the floor, a libation for the gods, even in this domestic setting. It's subtle and understated, more a gesture than a spectacle, but it signals a recognition that life, pleasure, and thought exist within a larger cosmic order. Ancient Greeks had this habit of weaving the divine into even their smallest actions, a reminder that no matter how mundane or indulgent, the gods are always nearby. By the time the afternoon light has shifted, falling in long golden slants through open windows, the gathering winds down. Guests stretch, rearranging cushions, exchanging whispered farewells. Wine cups are drained, food plates cleared, and the air feels lighter. The conversation now soft hums and murmurs. The symposium has fulfilled its purpose: intellectual stimulation, social bonding, and gentle indulgence, all wrapped in a space of comfortable familiarity. Finally, you rise, feeling the soft weight of satisfaction, both physical and mental. The warmth of the room, the tactile pleasure of food and wine, the rhythm of conversation, all combine into a delicate sense of well-being. Stepping out into the street once more, the sun has begun its slow descent, bathing the city in a warm, forgiving glow. The lessons of the day, from bustling markets to sacred rituals and intimate symposiums, settle gently around you. Life in Athens is complex, interwoven, and rhythmically measured, each activity feeding into the next like carefully composed music. You leave the lingering warmth and quiet laughter of the symposium behind and begin to stroll along a cobblestone street leading toward the city's residential quarter, where ordinary Athenians live in homes of modest size. The street is narrower here, shaded by the overhangs of second-story rooms and the occasional vine-draped courtyard. Children play in the alleys, chasing each other with scraps of cloth or sticks, their laughter echoing off the stone walls. A few women are sweeping their thresholds, tossing fine dust into the sunlight, the rhythmic motion almost meditative. The pace here is slower, more personal, and the smells are homely. Bread baking, fires for cooking, the tang of domestic herbs. You realize how seamlessly the public and private realms intertwine in this city. One moment debating politics, the next watching a child imitate a father's gestures in play. Passing through a low stone arch, you enter a courtyard shared by several families. Here, a man tends to small herb gardens, pulling fresh sprigs of mint and thyme for cooking, while his children chase a tethered goat that nibbles at stray leaves. A woman in a simple tunic carries water from a nearby well, her movements deliberate and graceful. The courtyard is alive with everyday rhythm, a symphony of domestic life that historians often overlook when focusing on political or military narratives. There's a harmony in these small tasks: the deliberate preparation of meals, the cultivation of herbs, the care of animals that grounds the city in the ordinary. You stop briefly near a small oven, where bread is baking in clay pots. The aroma is intoxicating, warm and comforting, curling around you like a soft blanket. You remember seeing similar ovens in the agora earlier in the day, but here, in the intimate domestic setting, the baking feels more personal, more deliberate. Bread is essential, both for sustenance and for the shared meals that structure Athenian life. Some scholars still debate whether baking was primarily a household task or increasingly commercialized, but it's clear that bread, along with olive oil, wine, and figs, forms the backbone of daily nourishment. Nearby, a young woman kneads dough with practiced hands, chatting quietly with a neighbor who leans on the low wall of the courtyard. Their conversation drifts from the price of olives at the market to the upcoming festival at the temple. These exchanges, though informal, serve to transmit practical information and reinforce social bonds. Even the simplest talk about food, children, or minor inconveniences becomes a thread in the fabric of communal life. As you walk further, the faint sound of a lyre draws your attention. A boy is seated on the steps of a small house, plucking the strings carefully while singing a simple song. The lyrics recount tales of gods, heroes, and occasional local gossip. An oral education of sorts, blending entertainment with storytelling. His mother watches from the doorway, a quiet smile on her face. Music, even at this small scale, is woven into daily existence, a gentle rhythm that connects generations. In another courtyard, a group of older men sits in a shaded area, discussing the day's news. One mentions a new shipment of grain arriving at the harbor. Another comments on a recently debated law at the picnics. They speak in measured tones, punctuating observations with humor and anecdotes from past assemblies. Their words drift lazily across the courtyard, mingling with the scent of herbs and the distant clatter of pottery. These conversations, informal though they are, maintain civic awareness in a society without newspapers or telegraphs. Historians still argue how representative these discussions were of wider public sentiment, but their presence is undeniable. You pause by a small fountain in the center of a courtyard where water trickles steadily into a stone basin. Women and children gather here to fill jugs, splash a little water on hot skin, or simply enjoy the soothing sound. Some toss a few coins or small pebbles into the basin as a minor offering, a gesture of thanks for the life-giving water. It's both practical and ritualized, blending the sacred with the mundane in a way that feels natural, almost unconscious.
The smell of roasting meat drifts from another home. Inside, a family prepares a modest meal of lamb, lentils, and vegetables. The father tends to spit over a small fire, while the mother arranges bowls of fruit and bread. Children sit nearby, learning to peel vegetables or grind grain. These tasks are simultaneously educational and necessary, teaching practical skills while reinforcing family cohesion. Quirky details emerge. One child sneezes from the flour dust, prompting laughter. A goat manages to sneak a mouthful of chopped herbs, and the household groans in amusement. Life here is a blend of work, play, and minor chaos. Ordinary, yet profoundly human. You notice a woman hanging freshly washed linen along a courtyard line. The fabric flutters gently in the breeze, its soft movement catching the light. Washing clothes is a communal effort, often accompanied by gossip and shared stories. Some pieces are plain, utilitarian. Others bear delicate embroidery, marking special occasions or family pride. Historians still argue whether domestic labor should be considered purely functional or as a subtle form of self-expression and status. Observing these details, you can see both practical and personal dimensions intertwining seamlessly. A narrow lane leads you past a potter's workshop, where clay figures, amphorae, and cooking vessels are arranged along the walls. The potter shapes a vessel on the wheel, hands moving fluidly, while apprentices assist with finishing touches. Nearby, a customer examines small statuettes, tapping lightly to judge the craftsmanship. Even in these modest workshops, the rhythm of daily life includes commerce, artistry, and mentorship, blending economy and culture in an unassuming yet vital dance. Children run past you again, now carrying small bundles of firewood or scraps of cloth. Their play has evolved into tasks, an early introduction to responsibility. A boy stops to mimic the gestures of his father, adjusting an imaginary hymation and pretending to deliver a speech. The adults smile indulgently, recognizing that even in imitation, civic habits and social norms are being absorbed. This continuity, play transforming into learned behavior, highlights how Athenian society passes its culture seamlessly from generation to generation, often outside formal instruction.
Finally, you approach a small shrine tucked into the corner of a courtyard dedicated to household gods, the Hestia hearth, and protective spirits. A family has left offerings of bread, wine, and incense, whispering brief prayers. The shrine is modest, unassuming, yet it holds profound significance. It marks the point where daily labor, domestic care, and spiritual mindfulness intersect. You pause to observe, feeling the calm rhythm of the courtyard and the interconnected lives that animate it. Here, in the quiet of ordinary homes, the city's soul is perhaps most evident. A tapestry of work, play, worship, and care interwoven seamlessly into everyday life. As the sun begins to lower in the sky, casting long shadows across cobblestones and courtyards, you step back into the main street, carrying with you the subtle, grounding rhythms of domestic Athens. Life here is not grandiose, but it is consistent, deeply textured, and entirely human. You realize that in observing these routines, the courtyard work, the herb gardens, the children's play, the gentle ritual of water and light, you've been tracing the heartbeat of ordinary life, a pulse as steady and essential as the city itself. You leave the quiet intimacy of residential courtyards and make your way toward the city's edge, where a patchwork of streets gradually gives way to gardens, small groves of olive trees, and open fields. The sunlight has softened into a warmer, late afternoon hue, illuminating dust motes that drift lazily in the gentle breeze. The sounds of the city, the market chatter, laughter from taverns, the splash of the baths, fade behind you. Here, the rhythm of life is gentler, more connected to the cycles of nature, a quiet counterpoint to the civic hustle of earlier hours. The first thing you notice is a garden tucked between two low walls, bursting with herbs, vegetables, and flowering plants. Women tend to the soil, kneeling on small mats, hands moving deftly among the leaves. You catch a faint whiff of thyme, oregano, and basil mixed with the earthy scent of freshly turned soil. Children run between the rows, chasing each other and laughing, occasionally stopping to pluck a ripe fig or cherry tomato. The garden isn't just a source of food, it's a living classroom, teaching responsibility, patience, and care while connecting people to the rhythms of the earth. Scholars still argue how much these gardens served purely practical purposes versus being symbols of household status, but it's clear that they were integral to daily life. A small flock of chickens pecks along the edge of the garden, scratching at the dirt, wings flapping occasionally as one bold bird tries to assert dominance over the others. The squawks and clucks blend with the soft rustle of leaves, creating a comforting, natural soundscape. You notice a woman tossing kitchen scraps to them, smiling faintly as she watches them compete for the morsels. This simple act illustrates a rhythm repeated countless times across the city. Food waste becomes nourishment, and care intersects with sustenance. Further along, you spot a small olive grove, its trees gnarled and twisted with age. Their silvery leaves shimmer in the soft light, and the air carries the unmistakable scent of olives and crushed leaves. A man prunes a low branch with meticulous care, explaining to his young apprentice why it's crucial to cut at just the right angle to encourage healthy growth. The boy nods, absorbing the lesson. Olive trees are central to the city's economy, cuisine, and culture, yet they also represent a slower, almost meditative aspect of life. Watching the careful rhythm of pruning and tending, you feel the gentle patience required to nurture living things over time. In a nearby orchard, small stone paths wind between rows of fruit trees. Lemons, figs, and pomegranates hang heavy on their branches, occasionally dropping a fruit with a soft thud onto the ground. A woman gathers the fallen produce, inspecting each one carefully before placing it into a woven basket. You notice a curious detail. One of the pomegranates bears a small carving, likely made by a child. Scholars still debate whether these playful carvings were simply amusement or an early form of artistic expression, but they highlight the interweaving of daily life and creativity in ordinary spaces. The soft bleating of goats draws your attention. A small herd grazes along a sun-drenched slope, overseen by a boy who swings a thin staff lazily, more for presence than enforcement. The goats nibble at shrubs and scattered grass, occasionally pausing to butt heads or climb over small rocks. Watching them, you realize that animals in these gardens and groves are not only practical, providing milk, eggs, or labor, but also deeply integrated into the social and sensory rhythm of daily life. Nearby, a modest field of wheat ripples gently in the breeze. You can almost hear the whisper of grain brushing against itself, a sound so subtle it's easy to overlook. A few women bend over the stalks, inspecting for pests or uneven growth. They converse quietly, sharing news, gossip, or advice about harvesting techniques. The field is a reminder that the city's sustenance relies on careful, continuous labor, much of it hidden from the bustle of the agora. Even the smallest task, plucking a wilted leaf, tying a bundle of stalks, carries significance in the larger cycle of life. A peculiar detail catches your eye: a row of small statues tucked between olive trees, weathered but still recognizable as gods and heroes. A child polishes one with a bit of cloth, as if the divine might somehow appreciate the shine. These statues are modest offerings, reminders that spiritual practice extends into the garden, a gentle acknowledgement that the natural world and divine order coexist. Historians still argue whether such figures were primarily protective charms, educational tools, or symbolic markers, but their presence is pervasive across domestic and civic spaces alike. You continue toward a small irrigation channel, where water flows slowly from a raised stone aqueduct into the fields. Women and children work at the edges, directing water into different plots, smoothing the channels with small stones or mud. The movement of water is hypnotic, a steady pulse that mirrors the rhythm of daily labor and natural cycles. Some believe these channels were simply functional, while others argue they were ritualized as part of agricultural festivals. Either way, the flowing water carries life, sustenance, and a sense of continuity with the seasons. Nearby, a man is constructing a small trellis for grapevines. He measures, carves, and binds wood with practiced precision. The vines climb carefully, guided by his hands, promising sweet fruit in the months to come. This simple act is repeated countless times across the city and surrounding countryside, a testament to long-term planning and quiet patience. Agriculture here is not frantic or rushed. It's measured, deliberate, and deeply intertwined with daily existence. A few villagers gather near a modest shrine to Demeter, offering small portions of grain and wine in thanks for the bounty of the earth. Their voices are low and respectful, barely rising above the gentle rustle of leaves. The ritual is understated, almost private, yet it anchors the space in a sense of sacred purpose. Even in the open fields, the divine is acknowledged in subtle ways, reminding you that spirituality is woven seamlessly into both city and countryside life. As the afternoon stretches on, shadows lengthen across the groves and fields. You pause on a small rise, looking back toward the city. From this vantage point, the agora, the baths, the temples, and the houses blend into a cohesive whole, framed by olive groves and wheat fields. Life in Athens isn't a series of disjointed events, it's a continuous flow of activity, each rhythm and ritual connecting people to one another and to the land that sustains them. Even the smallest gestures, a child chasing a goat, a woman pruning a tree, a statue polished by tiny hands, are threads in this living tapestry. You take a slow, deliberate breath, inhaling the earthy scents, the faint tang of olives, the sweet aroma of ripe fruit, and the warmth of sun-warmed soil. The gentle rustling of leaves, the distant chatter of children, and the soft burble of irrigation channels form a calming symphony, underscoring the interconnectedness of daily life, labor, and leisure. Here, at the edge of the city, the pulse of Athens is quiet but steady, flowing from garden to grove, from field to street, from human to divine. As the sun dips lower toward the horizon, casting long golden shadows, you begin to head back toward the heart of the city. Your steps feel lighter, more attuned to the rhythms you've observed. You carry with you the quiet wisdom of the gardens and groves, the gentle reminder that life, whether in bustling streets, crowded baths, or sunlit fields, is a series of deliberate acts woven together by attention, care, and presence. And in this continuity, Athens feels not just like a city, but a living organism, pulsing with the measured heartbeats of its people and the steady rhythm of the land around them. And in this continuity, Athens feels not just like a city, but a living organism, pulsing with the measured heartbeats of its people and the steady rhythm of the land around them. As the sun sinks lower, painting the sky in warm hues of amber and rose, you make your way back toward the central streets of Athens, drawn by the subtle hum of evening activity. The city is quieter now, but not deserted. Rather, it has shifted into the calm rhythm of late afternoon and early evening. Merchants pack away their goods, the clatter of wooden carts slowing to occasional creaks. Children return from their errands or games, and the occasional stray dog wanders through the streets in search of scraps. You breathe in deeply, savoring the mingling scents of baked bread, roasted chickpeas, and the earthy tang of olive groves still faint in the air, and feel yourself sinking into the gentle cadence of city life. Passing a familiar fountain, you see women gathering to fill jars with fresh water. Their movements are graceful and deliberate, and their quiet chatter carries a softness that seems to blend perfectly with the gurgle of flowing water. Some pause briefly to sprinkle a few drops onto the stone as a small offering, an acknowledgement of the minor deities said to reside in springs and wells. These gestures are unremarkable to the casual observer, but deeply woven into daily practice. Historians still debate whether such rituals were primarily spiritual or habitual, but the effect is tangible, a subtle rhythm threading through even the most mundane tasks. Further along, the city opens into a small square where artisans and craftsmen gather, preparing their shops for the evening. A potter smooths the surface of a freshly thrown amphora, while an apprentice carefully carves decorative motifs into a clay tablet. The air carries the faint scent of wet clay, mingling with the earthy aromas of nearby stalls where roasted nuts and dried figs are displayed. You pause for a moment to watch, noticing the delicate precision of each hand motion, the concentration mixed with quiet conversation. Craftsmanship in Athens is as much about pride and routine as it is about necessity, and the artisans seem to move in a natural rhythm, uninterrupted by the bustle of the day. Nearby, a small school group disperses, children laughing and holding books and wax tablets. Their teacher follows, reminding them to return home promptly and continue their studies. Education here is an ongoing, almost invisible current, less formalized than in later societies, but omnipresent in civic life. Even casual conversation among children can carry lessons, whether about numbers, letters, or social customs. A child waves to a friend across the street, dropping a small pebble as a playful signal, and you notice how easily learning and play intermingle in this daily rhythm. The air grows cooler, carrying faint scents of evening meals being prepared in homes and taverns. A rooster crows in the distance, a small, almost comic reminder that despite the human order imposed on the city, nature continues on its own schedule. This interplay between human design and natural rhythm is constant. You can feel it in the shifting shadows along the streets, the soft rustle of leaves, and the occasional ripple in the city's fountains. You approach a small shrine dedicated to Hermes, tucked neatly between two buildings. Travelers and residents alike leave tiny offerings here, pebbles, scraps of bread, or sips of wine. A merchant pauses briefly, touching the shrine before continuing with his evening tasks. These shrines are often overlooked in histories of public life, but they reveal how deeply ritual is interwoven with ordinary activities. Even a fleeting acknowledgement of a god, a moment of pause before a journey or business transaction, marks the day with reflection and presence. As evening deepens, you wander past a group of musicians and performers setting up for the night. The soft strum of lyres and faint rhythm of flutes drift through the street, mingling with murmured conversation. Their music is gentle, almost hypnotic, creating an ambient layer that seems to slow the passage of time. Some passersby stop briefly, clapping lightly or tossing small coins in appreciation, while others move on, letting the music accompany their steps. Music, in this context, is both entertainment and punctuation, marking transitions from daytime tasks to evening repose. Near the edge of the square, a man tends a small hearth, cooking a modest meal of lentils, onions, and roasted fish. The smoke curls upward, carrying a savory aroma that draws curious glances. You notice a few passersby pause, inhaling deeply, perhaps planning their own dinner or simply savoring the scent. Cooking, like bathing, socializing, or worship, is a tactile rhythm, connecting body and mind, shaping both nourishment and experience. You walk past a quiet street where children are playing with miniature clay figurines, reenacting scenes they've observed in the city: marketplaces, baths, temples, and even earlier symposiums. Their play is detailed, imaginative, and remarkably educational, reflecting and reinforcing the rhythms of adult life. One boy imitates a priest tending a flame, while another mimics a merchant weighing coins. The scene is endearing, but it's also a reminder that daily life is learned through observation, repetition, and playful imitation. Further along, a small courtyard glows with the last rays of sunlight, and you notice a family gathering around a central fire for evening prayers. They offer bread, wine, and a sprinkling of water, whispering quiet thanks for safety, sustenance, and guidance. The ritual is simple, private, and intimate, yet it mirrors the practices observed in temples and shrines throughout the city. It's a quiet bridge between personal life and communal culture, a moment where the day's activities fold gently into reflection. In the distance, you can see the Temple of Athena, its columns catching the final light, glowing faintly as dusk approaches. The city feels held in a gentle balance. Markets are closed, baths emptied, streets are quieter, yet the pulse of life continues in small gestures: cooking, conversation, play, and prayer. The layers of civic, domestic, and spiritual life overlap seamlessly, forming a rhythm both steady and nuanced. As twilight deepens, you walk past a small fountain where travelers pause to refresh and perhaps leave a token offering. The water glints faintly under the emerging evening sky, reflecting the muted gold of the setting sun. Children toss pebbles playfully, while adults draw a few sibs for themselves and their animals. Even this simple act, gathering water, pausing, noticing the world, cements the quiet continuity of life, connecting human action with natural and divine cycles. Finally, you find yourself on a gentle rise overlooking the city, watching shadows stretch and merge. The agora, the baths, the temples, the residential quarters, the gardens and groves, all are visible in one connected panorama. The city breathes as a single organism, its heartbeat measured by ritual, work, leisure, and care. From bustling public spaces to intimate domestic corners, from cultivated gardens to sacred shrines, every action contributes to the woven rhythm of Athens, a melody of ordinary life rendered extraordinary through observation and presence. As night settles gently over the city, the streets grow quieter, softened by the fading glow of lanterns and torches. The hustle and bustle of the agora, the laughter and chatter of the baths, and the murmur of the tavern and symposium are now replaced by a calm, almost hushed rhythm. You find yourself walking slowly through the familiar lanes, your footsteps echoing softly on worn stone, each sound a gentle punctuation in the serene evening. The city feels at rest, yet alive, a living organism exhaling after a long, active day. You pass a few late-night shops, their owners tidying wares and sweeping thresholds. The scent of warm bread and roasted chickpeas lingers in the air, mingling with faint aromas of herbs and wine. The rhythmic sweep of brooms, the clinking of pottery, the occasional murmur of conversation all create a soothing nocturnal soundtrack, a lullaby composed by everyday life. Even the smallest acts, folding cloth, stacking amphorae, securing shutters, feel meaningful in this gentle, measured context. Turning down a quieter lane, you spot a family gathered outside their home, sitting on low benches as they enjoy the cool evening air. A mother fans herself slowly, a father sips diluted wine, and children chase a stray cat with delighted squeals. The simplicity of this scene is striking. No grandeur, no spectacle, just the quiet pleasure of shared presence. Scholars still debate the role of such domestic rituals in forming social cohesion, but here, in these subtle moments, it is impossible to ignore the woven bonds of community and family. Nearby, a small shrine glimmers under the moonlight, its offerings of bread, wine, and incense softly illuminated. A young man pauses to leave a token, a few coins tucked beside a tiny figurine, before silently touching the shrine in acknowledgement. These private acts of devotion, modest as they are, mirror the city's broader spirituality. Even in the hush of night, the divine is present, quietly anchoring human life to unseen cycles and rhythms. The faint sound of water trickling from a fountain carries down the street. You approach, dipping your fingers into the cool, flowing stream. The sensation is calming, grounding, connecting you to centuries of Athenians who have performed the same simple gesture. Around the fountain, children play quietly with pebbles, and a cat slinks along the edge, stretching and purring. The scene feels timeless, a gentle reminder that life's smallest details, sound, touch, scent, can carry profound comfort. As you continue your walk, the soft glow from oil lamps illuminates the facades of modest homes. Curtains flap lightly in the evening breeze, and occasional laughter drifts from open windows. Even in the quiet, the city hums softly, an intricate layering of domestic life and public space, of human action and natural rhythm. You pass by a courtyard where an older man teaches a child to read, the wax tablet faintly catching reflected light. The lesson is slow and patient, punctuated by gentle laughter and the occasional correction. Knowledge, care, and presence flow seamlessly here, like the unseen undercurrents of the entire city. You find yourself drawn toward a small grove at the edge of town, where olive trees sway in the evening wind. Their silver leaves shimmer in the moonlight, and the scent of the grove mingles with faint herbs carried on the breeze. A solitary goat grazes quietly, occasionally looking up to blink in the soft light. You pause, taking in the rhythm of the night, the whisper of leaves, the distant call of a bird returning to its perch, the faint sound of water from an irrigation channel. It's the same rhythm that underpins life throughout Athens, gentle, steady, continuous. Ahead, the faint sound of a lyre and flute drifts from a private home where musicians play for a small gathering. The music is slow, meditative, and unhurried, inviting listeners to relax and let their minds wander. Some passersby pause, leaning lightly against walls to listen, while others continue walking, carrying the melody with them in memory. Music, like other small rituals, threads through daily life, connecting people across time and space in subtle, almost invisible ways. Music, like other small rituals, threads through daily life, connecting people across time and space in subtle, almost invisible ways. You wander into a quiet street lined with shuttered shops and homes, the warm light from a few remaining lamps casting gentle pools of illumination. You notice small details that might otherwise escape attention. A child's toy left carefully on a doorstep, a cat curled up on a window ledge, a single potted plant leaning toward the moonlight. These small moments, mundane yet precious,
remind you that the rhythm of life continues even when most eyes are closed, the ordinary imbued with quiet significance.
A soft breeze carries the scent of baked goods and herbs, mingling with the faint smoke of hearth fires. The city's pulse has slowed, but it has not stopped. The interplay of human presence, domestic activity, and natural rhythm continues quietly, almost imperceptibly. Even in the hush of night, Athens is alive with subtle motion, a reminder that life is composed of countless intertwined threads, each small act contributing to the whole.
You pause one last time on a gentle rise overlooking the city. The agora, baths, gardens, streets, and homes form a living mosaic, bathed in moonlight and dotted with flickering oil lamps. The day's journey through markets, temples, baths, taverns, and symposiums has led to this calm, reflective moment. The city, with its layered rhythms and quiet harmonies, seems to breathe alongside you, carrying the pulse of countless lives, small rituals, and unspoken connections. Finally, you settle onto a stone bench, feeling the soft night air brush your skin. The distant hum of life, water trickling, animals shifting, faint laughter from a courtyard, forms a lullaby for the city. Your thoughts drift, slowly and gently, toward the comfort of rest. The sun has set, the day has ended, and the quiet pulse of Athens at night wraps around you like a warm, familiar blanket.
Now allow yourself to sink fully into the calm, breathing slowly, noticing the subtle scents and sounds that linger in the night. The rhythm of the city, once vibrant and bustling, now soothes and reassures. Every small action you observed, the games, the music, the meals, the rituals, threads together to form the steady, timeless heartbeats of human life. Let this rhythm guide you into rest, carrying with it the gentle, persistent comforts of ordinary life, seen through the eyes of one wandering quietly through Athens. The evening deepens, and the city settles into a soft, unbroken quiet. Your steps are slow now, almost imperceptible, as the warmth of the day fades into the gentle cool of night. Everywhere around you, the faint flicker of lamps and the soft rustle of leaves mark a world at rest. You notice the subtle rhythms of the night, water trickling from a distant fountain, the soft padding of a cat on cobblestones, the occasional sigh of a window shutter in the breeze. Each sound is small, ordinary, yet entirely comforting. As you breathe in the scent of night air, mingled with faint herbs and baked bread, your thoughts drift effortlessly. The city's pulse, once loud and commanding, has softened into a slow, steady hum, wrapping around you like a familiar blanket. The markets, baths, and symposiums of the day are quiet memories now, their energy distilled into gentle echoes that linger softly in the mind. Even the smallest gestures, the trimming of olive branches, the care of children, the polishing of statues, hold meaning, forming a continuous thread through time and space. Let your body sink further into this calm, releasing any tension from the day. Feel your muscles relax, your thoughts slowing, your senses gently attuned to the quiet beauty of the city at rest. Imagine the streets, the gardens, the fountains, and the homes breathing softly alongside you, a living organism lulled into repose. You are part of this rhythm, as much as any child chasing a goat, any artisan shaping clay, any family offering bread at a shrine. Now, as your eyelids grow heavy and the night embraces you fully, allow the gentle heartbeat of Athens to guide you into sleep. Let the soft sounds, warm memories, and quiet rituals cradle your mind, slowly, gently, entirely. Rest here, knowing that the city and life itself continues peacefully, wrapped in calm, continuity, and quiet presence. End of script. Sweet dreams.